and welcome back to part 2 on this series on hypothalamic amenorrhea. So this is when women lose their periods as often a result of both lifestyle and psychological influences, one being an inability to deal with too much stress from both overtraining and underfueling, and over time, if this is prolonged, the body goes into a state of survival mode where the first thing to go is often your periods, or the cycles become dysregulated. So today I'm going to be talking specifically about my journey and the steps that I had to go through in order to restore them. And like I mentioned in the last one, it didn't necessarily happen as quickly as I'd expected. It took over 6 years to actually get my periods back, and over 8 years to get them regular again. So I'm going to be laying down all of the things that I did and some of the science to back some of these claims if you are interested, or simply just want to know how to restore your cycles if you are in a similar position and are looking for some additional support on this. So one of the first things that I did to restore my cycles was actually to just start eating more. And my diet was predominantly based around protein, vegetables, and low glycemic index carbohydrates at that point. And one of the tendencies that people who have amenorrhea typically have are also perfectionist ideologies. And that can sometimes be materialized as having a perfect diet and training schedule that matches what you believe is going to give you the ideal body you want. But like I mentioned in the last episode, if your main concern and priority is actually just restoring health and getting your cycles back, one of the first things you need to do is actually just start eating more food. So while it might challenge certain preoccupations that you have around eating things like white rice, bread, and pasta, your body actually just needs those calories to help it feel safer again. And if you're training very hard and intensively, you're going to need those calories regardless. So one of the things I had to start doing was I was still eating enough protein to support my daily needs, between 1.5 and 2 grams per kilo of body weight per day. But the majority of my other calories, which were around 2,500 plus I needed a day in order to restore them, did look a lot like having white rice, pasta, I was having bread again, and just everything that I had been avoiding and eliminating because I thought they were causing more harm actually ended up serving me more in the long run because I was able to fuel myself better. I was less stressed around food, and I actually felt full for the first time in a long time. In some cases, when women experienced amenorrhea, when calories were simply increased by over 300 a day, and that was just looking at the calories, not even touching the exercise, a lot of women actually restored their cycles because they were probably matching their daily needs better because they were just eating more. So more often than not, a lot of that food noise that you're getting from dysregulated appetite, you should probably listen to those signals and try and eat or deliberately track, even if it's for a short period of time, to make sure that you're getting enough calories in to support hormonal function and just allow you to get into a position where you're more comfortable with eating food, and it's gonna feel much better once you just start eating more and fueling, because not only will performance feel better, but your mood will feel more regulated and your hormones will start to restore balance as well. So the next thing is exercise. Now, I know that for a lot of people, exercise plays a huge role. For me, it definitely did, in terms of my identity, where I used it to cope with stressors, and there was a dependency there which did relate to my amenorrhea recovery as well. So the first thing I had to do was I cut down my training from doing 4 heavy strength training sessions, which were pushing towards failure, and 2 cardiovascular sessions a week. I had to break that down into 3 lifting sessions in total. And a lot of that moved away from things I was doing before. And instead of doing a 2-hour session, my sessions were reduced to an hour to 90 minutes max, 3 times a week. And I focused on just bringing up my food. And any exercise outside of that was just simply doing steps and cycling to work. So I had to really reduce that training volume and load, which can be very difficult for a lot of us to do because A, you might really enjoy exercise, and B, if you were like me and using it as a stress relief as well as a coping mechanism for dealing with some of the other difficult things that go on in life, it's a very hard thing to let go of. But I came in with the mindset when I started working with my coach, Becca, at the time, that if my priority was actually just restoring my health back, I needed to allow my body to trust me. And if that meant just dialing down the intensity so I was not pushing to failure, I was going to an RP 8 or 80% of my max and really scaling down the volume so it wasn't so much that I couldn't recover from, it actually meant that my period came back much quicker than I was anticipating, even though I had done work over a number of years before that to get to this stage. If it has taken a few months and you're still in this position, the first thing I would recommend, as long as you're also looking after the nutrition side, is to actually just look at your training routine and dial it down. And just know that once your periods start to regulate themselves again and you're starting to feel better, you might be able to add in another session in the week, but really just working on building that volume up over time. And if you are choosing to exercise more and bring up the volume, you also need to increase your calories as well. It doesn't just work that when your period comes back, that you can just start doing more exercise and eating the same. You need to still make up for the food as if you were doing exactly the same as before, restoring them, making sure that there's enough coming in to fuel your workouts and make sure that you feel good in yourself. So the next one is weight gain, which I know for a lot of people is a very sensitive subject because a lot of us, myself included, used to associate the number on the scale with your worth. We believe that this number, for me, that magic number was 55 kilos. If I'm there or just below it, I'm in perfect condition. I don't need to be bigger. But what I hadn't realized at the time was actually I had to overshoot that weight in order to regain my cycles. So you have to also think about the fact that there is going to be an element of discomfort because what you believe is the perfect body and the ideal body for you may not necessarily be the healthiest. And I know specifically from bodybuilding, I developed quite a bad dysmorphia around what it was to look like a normal human and not look like a extremely lean human being who was 48 kilos, which was significantly underweight for my BMI as well. But unfortunately, that became my distorted reality. And in the case of amenorrhea, a lot of women also experience these feelings of control around everything that they are doing, eating, how they behave. And it becomes this nasty cycle. But what I will say here is, again, just reinforcing the point that if the priority is health, then it's going to be about reconnecting with your body and building a healthier relationship that doesn't center around your weight, but more about how you move, feel, and perform. They are much greater indicators of health, and by not focusing on the scale specifically and just the thought of what it's like to be stronger and feel capable and have more energy to go out and do things with your friend, they are worth so much more than simply gaining a couple kilos for the sake of restoring your fertility. Another thing that I experienced was a huge mental shift, and similarly to the weight gain, I had to take my identity away from bodybuilding, for one, and just the idea that I thought I was going to be an influencer and athlete. I genuinely don't care about that right now. I care more about how the information that gets out there is going to help more people. And if that is through talking about my own experiences and stories and the amount of other women that I see go through similar issues with losing their periods, this is something that needs to be talked about. And understanding that your identity is not your sport, it's who you are as a person. And I know that people are not going to remember me for being like an Olympic lifter or the sports that I did or being a bodybuilder or whatever it is. They're going to remember me for who I am. And that is so much more important, that everything that you identify as is simply a part of you, but it is not you. So trying to remove that and think that just because you're not training 6 or 7 days a week and you're not eating the perfect diet doesn't mean that you're any less valuable as a human. That's what makes us unique and different. While a lot of this is going to be an identity shift, understanding that your worth is not defined by how lean you are, how perfect your body is, and it's not what people will associate you with at the end of the day. So when we look into the science briefly, what is actually required? For most women, calorie intakes need to go up. And that will look around 2,200 to 2,800 or more, depending again on lots of factors like your muscle mass, body fat percentage, age, height, weight, etc. So again, that's a ballpark figure, but we are looking for an optimal energy availability around 45 calories per kilo of fat-free mass per day in order to facilitate optimal recovery between training, modulating stress, and supporting overall hormone functions. The second one to think about is a leptin threshold. So like I mentioned in the last episode, leptin is the hormone of satiety. So often when women have a lower body fat percentage, this becomes a little bit dysregulated, and in order for the leptin to function more efficiently and to make you feel fuller from foods, there's often a body fat set point that exists within it as well. For most women, if they are amenorrheic and they are typically leaner and have lower body fat percentages, aiming for anywhere from 20 to 23% is often what's required to initially restore cycles. Again, that can vary between individuals, and some women can just, or they're very lucky and they have periods with very, very low percentages of body fat, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's optimal or the best thing for you. So just bearing that in mind, that there is probably going to be an amount of body fat that you need to gain, but just doing it steadily and incrementally, or if you want to recover your cycles faster and you feel like you're ready to take that leap of faith, then you can just start to increase your calories, drop the exercise down, and let your body do its thing, and it will probably restore faster. That's the other thing with timelines, is that for most women, it can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months to over a year for cycles to restore or start to kind of become more regular again. So it's not a simple overnight process that you just start eating more and they come back. It can take time. And in my case, it took 6 years. And that wasn't just me increasing my calories. I was increasing calories, I brought my training volume down, I was doing cyclical ketogenic diets, eliminating everything, and actually it just made things worse. So it comes down to, most of the time, eat more, train less, find different ways to modulate your stress, and overall your cycles should naturally start to restore once your body starts to feel more balanced and your body fat is up, as well as some other weight from muscle mass. And finally, some of the strategies that will not work for you are by taking birth control pills. I don't think it's one of those things where you can just simply put a bandage on it and wait for it to heal. You have to actively put in the work to want to get your cycles back. Increasing calories may not be sufficient enough if your training volume is still really high. So again, finding ways that you don't have to think about, just what am I going to do if I don't train? There are so many things. You can read a book, you can go for a walk, you can spend time with friends, you can use that time differently. But just simply increasing the food and thinking that things are going to resolve themselves is also another thing that we need to think about. Another one is thinking that you can maintain the level of leanness that you have and just wait for it to come back. Again, another point where it's not about the leanness anymore, because your body is already telling you that it's not happy. So if you think that things are going to just simply sort themselves out and change without you doing anything, it just doesn't work like that. Nothing in life works that way. So just understanding that, yes, it's going to be uncomfortable for a period of time, but it's going to feel great once you feel good again. And if I'm any consolation for this, I feel the strongest I have ever done. It's taken me this much time to get my cycles back, and again, you just feel better in general. And that was the main goal for me, is I didn't want to think about my appearance much anymore. I just really wanted to get my period back, and I was willing to do whatever it takes to get there. So ending this episode on a few comments. So the first one being that your body is not simply broken because you don't have periods anymore. You can regain them. It just takes a calorie surplus and reducing some training volume, and not necessarily allowing panic to settle in once you see scales go up and your body starts to change. Just know that your body is adaptive and it may just need some time to settle and figure itself out. Mine did. I thought that where I had achieved peak leanness was back then, but actually my composition has changed massively since I've regained my cycles. And I feel much better for it. There are obviously times where I struggled massively mentally, but Again, understanding that your period is a sign of health, not a sign of weakness that should be ignored if you don't have it. It's something that's part of being a woman, and we should embrace it and love that. So thank you for watching today. If you have any questions at all or would like me to go into more detail about my own recovery journey, I'd be more than happy to share that with you. But again, if you're watching and you're going through this, just know that you're not alone and that there is help and support out there whenever you need it. Thank you so much.